fan level of enthusiasm and attachment to this team, the Flames, is always something I marvel at. And I think the second night of our playoffs is showing that between last night and tonight, we're off to a terrific start. It should be a great next 2 months, and it's nice to have fans in buildings and a real sense of normal. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
What's the latest update you've gotten from CSEC in terms of the arena deal, and do you have any plans to meet with officials with the city while you're here?
I wasn't planning on meeting with officials for the city while I'm here. I'm here to see the game. I have a meeting tomorrow with the ownership group, and I'm sure I'll get an update. Obviously, the Flames ultimately need a new building, and I remain hopeful, and I'm sure they do, that becomes a reality.
How much of a priority is that? Knowing that you haven't had any meetings or official talks, but is that still a priority for the league to have a new building here?
I think it's a priority for the city of Calgary. I think it's a priority for the Flames. I think it's a priority for the people that live in Calgary and want concerts and family shows in addition to NHL hockey. And ultimately, this building has to be replaced. I don't think there's any question about that.
Do you have any reason for optimism in that regard?
I'm always optimistic. But obviously there's nothing going on right this second to report that would indicate that there's going to be a solution immediately. But my hope is that everybody can figure this out.
Penalties were up early in yesterday's games. You know, what's the reason for that? Was there a concerted effort?
I don't want to shock everybody, but over the last 10 years, there have always been more penalties called in the playoffs than the regular season. I don't know why the perception is to the contrary, but that happens to be the case. And the officials, and I was on a conference call with them, I think on Saturday, and we said, Stephen Walkham said, Coley Campbell said, I said the same thing we say every year before the playoffs. Call the standard. Don't change the way you call the game. Now, I think for everybody who watches the game, you know the playoffs are played with a little less time and space. They're more physical and they're more intense, but the officials are instructed to call the game the way they always do.
So that's a concerted effort to keep the regular season standard.
But it's the standard. It's not a regular season standard. It's not a playoff standard. It is the standard and has been the standard for years and years and years.
Calgary is the home of Canada's national women's hockey team as well as the PWHPA's Team Scotiabank. Following those meetings with the PHF and the PWHPA, does the league have any further plans to step in on any discussions in supporting women's hockey?
We tried to bring the parties together. I think if women's hockey can be successful at the professional level, it needs everybody who has a vested interest pulling on the oars, to use a different sport analogy, at the same time. But both sides have chosen to go it alone, and we've wished both sides well. And I hope at least one of them is successful. I hope they're both successful, but I have concerns, and I think realistically it would be better if everybody banded together, but that's not where their focus is right now, and we don't have the power to force anybody to do anything, to the contrary, but we tried to be constructive in bringing the parties together, but they didn't seem to want to do that.
Would you mind sharing what some of those concerns are?
No, I think it's better that you talk to them. I don't want to speak for either of them. My concerns about them being together, or the fact that they don't want to work together?
Just things that you would like to see leagues potentially partnering with the NHL bring to the table.
Well, but as long as there are two competing organizations, I think the fragmentation is not constructive on something that has to begin at an embryonic state. I think all the resources need to be brought together if it's going to be successful. That is my opinion, and apparently there isn't a unanimous view on that from the organizations involved, and I respect that, and we've wished them both well.
Do the parties, the two individual parties, have yours / the NHL's blessing to work with
Yeah.
your partner clubs?
Our clubs are free to do whatever they want with whomever they want in this regard. There's no mandate from the league. Neither organization has our imprimatur because, as I said, I think the whole notion that to try and start a women's professional league the right way is going to be attempted in a fragmented way is less than ideal, in my opinion. Maybe they'll both prove me wrong. Maybe one of them will prove me wrong. But in terms of if our clubs, any of our clubs, choose to get involved individually, they're free to do that. But neither organization has been granted our imprimatur. What? Anything else? No? Got a little energetic at the end of the first period. We have another game. Is it still in double overtime? So, wow. So we're off to an interesting start, which is what we love about the playoffs.
I guess events in the summer, they all kind of scheduled as planned. I know things sometimes are up in the air with COVID. That kind of sets a schedule, but
Everything
draft-
that's scheduled. Well, what we've learned over the last 2.5 years is you can make schedules and you can make plans, but you better have options and be flexible because you don't know. Hopefully, we're coming out of COVID, and if that's the case, we go on a schedule. If something happens, if there's another variant or another outbreak or there are regulations and you can't cross the border, all things we hope don't happen, but if they do, we'll have to deal with them. As I think you've seen us do for the last 2.5 years. Whenever we've had to pivot, we've pivoted. We had to reschedule this season 105 games, and we did it, and we completed the regular season. The playoffs are running a little late than we normally like, although that's because of the Olympic schedule as well. And it was fortunate that we had those 2.5, 3 weeks built in because it gave us a better opportunity to reschedule the games that had to be rescheduled. Ideally, would we be done? Last possible date for the Stanley Cup Finals is June 30th. A couple of weeks earlier would be better. The draft in June would be better, but we're doing the best we can under the circumstances. And, I would be remiss if I didn't say that if it weren't for the great cooperation with the Players Association, the players, the teams, ownership, we wouldn't have been as successful getting through completing 1920, playing 2021 the way we did with the realignment that we were forced to do because we couldn't cross the border, and got this season in as well. It took, the ultimate team sport needed the ultimate team effort in order to get us to this point, and we're grateful to be here.
Long term, do you see if Calgary does not get a new arena, would it impact their ability to host an event like, say, the draft?
If we're going to hold any league events here, there needs to be a new building. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anybody. And you see the difference. I assume some of you have been up the road. I actually lived in the bubble there for 3 weeks or so. What is standard operating procedures in buildings is different than it was. How old is this building? 40 years old? Right. I was actually in this building during the Olympics in '88, and that was a different time.
Building's still pretty the same.
Building, although it's clean, but it doesn't resemble a lot of our other buildings. But for those of you who travel the league, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But what is comparable here to anywhere else is the great fans. And as I started my remarks, I think anybody who comes here has to love and marvel the Sea of Red.
Have you had any conversations with the new mayor or anything?
Not while I'm here. I've since the new mayor has become the new mayor, we've chatted a couple of times on the phone.
Okay, and what she relayed to you about?
I think everybody understands everybody. At least I hope they do. Good. Let's go see the second period. Thank you. Good to see you all.